Hello and welcome to another episode of Not Another Podcast. I am James Jimneso Cowan. Joining me is Sean Baal Carlson, Geordie McAleer, I remembered your name this week, and Iain Snyper Turner. And we are the Esports Social Club, proudly brought to you by Skrilla, who are a fantastic sponsor of ours. And they have been providing esports fantasy as well as esports betting as well. So make sure you check out the odds. And remember, gamble responsibly. Now, we've really honed in on that jingle, haven't we, for Skrilla?
Mm-hmm.
You guys are getting good.
Practice makes
good. Yep. But we've had an interesting week. In terms of the podcast, I think our discussion in last week's podcast, it's kind of weird for us too, because we sort of record these ahead of time. Mm. So from when we've had the discussion to when it's released and to when we also record another podcast, it's been almost, I'm not going to say the length of time, but it feels like a lifetime ago that we had the discussion around OCE
keep
content.
The secret of show business alive.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, it's
here's one we prepared earlier.
It sparked a really good conversation, as you said, and then off the back of that, a bunch of idiots came in and had their dumb opinions. But
that's the beauty of Twitter.
There was some good conversations happening, and I'm glad they did. I'm glad they did happen.
It was good to see conversation around it, and I think that's the way that we're going to put it, is that we spark conversation, not this content war that people seem to have made it out to be.
Go into the content creators Discord channel and tell us there's a war. Tell us there's a war going on. Doesn't look like a war, mate.
No, it's just a bunch of people with hot takes that took it to like the whole war status. That's all. People out there commenting on it and talking shit about the whole content scenario without even having seen the spark of the content, which was our podcast. But then
they're making it out like the Fire Nation attack.
Yeah, exactly. Then to assume what our points were without even listening, and then typical Twitter.
Yeah, but
they just did like a Tinder of hot takes, like just on face value. Like, they talked about social media. Well, next. Oh, they talked about content creating. Oh, shit, next.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the...
They just saw the topic page. They were like, I know exactly what they've spoken about.
I bet they're just grumpy old men.
The irony of this is the fact that the people that we're addressing probably didn't even listen to the podcast.
Yeah. And they won't listen to this one either.
No, so it's like, we're just yelling into the void right now in terms of this. But it's good to see that, nonetheless, deeper discussion on content and what makes good content was had.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we wanted to achieve from it.
I thought we killed it.
There was some really good points out there too. Some people brought up different sort of perspectives on content and where potentially we're lacking, and echoed some of the points that we made on this podcast.
It was as if we were engaged by the community.
Yeah, well.
And, provoked deep thought on the matter.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, as we said, is exactly what we wanted. So I think it's good to see that the discussion had taken off on it. We're not going to really rehash on it too much because I think the discussion's been out there and it's been had. But we did want to.
We'll touch base on it later on.
Touch base.
We can touch base on
a couple more weeks or something just to see how it's going. Because we already have the ESL content that they put out for. I think that was for AUNZ
from a TO perspective.
Yeah, from a TO perspective. So they're starting to set the benchmark there.
Because there's multiple different, as we touched on, multiple different facets of content. There's the TOs, there's the even some of the journalistic perspectives as well. We didn't really touch on those because probably I think it's safe to say up until recently there hasn't been a wide array of journalistic content. There's only been one or two sources, but now there's actually starting to sprout some more sources, some more people getting involved in that. It's good to see. A lot of stories to be told from around the grounds.
I'll be stoked if, obviously sparking conversations, awesome. And that's what we're trying to do. Mm-hmm. And I was really happy to see that, particularly some of the people that were engaging with us. These are people that are heavily involved in our industry and different organizations and TOs and things like that. But I'll be stoked if we can actually see a notable sort of change to approach. Some action off the back of that podcast, or not even just the podcast, the resulting conversation afterwards. If we could see some action off the back of that, I'll be stoked.
So it was a call to action. We've had the call. Now we need the action.
Yeah,
I think it's safe to say that. But that's good. Touch base on that. Now we've had this is, as I was leading into before. Normally we record these at different intervals and things like that. So the conversation for us had on content occurred between ourselves some time ago, and it's good to see a lot of the things playing out. But this time we're actually going to be commenting on some stuff that probably a little bit more recent to when we recorded to when we will actually release this. But one thing we wanted to chat on, and now this is something that's probably only just unfolding in that sense, and as many people may or may not be aware, RLCS, Rocket League Championship Series World Championships, the OCE qualifiers are occurring. They were bequeathed to LPL, which is good to see another OCE tournament organizer actually, carry that torch and go on. There was a bit of skepticism over how things would go because, lo and behold, they're not actually too native to Rocket League itself. Not to say that it wasn't without its problems. I think they did the right thing by engaging the right group of people, RLO, the Rocket League Oceania group, who are, by all accounts, a very dedicated group of volunteers and are very passionate about Rocket League. They do a lot of work in creating tournaments for free and trying to build the community up. So it was good to see them partnering with the right people. Whether or not they'd actually followed through with that partnership in the right way and utilised and leveraged their expertise and strengths, I think there's a bit of skepticism about that, particularly around the qualifiers. Now, I'm not going to touch on that without further information, but one of the things I wanted to chat about was actually after seeing the first round of broadcast, there was, as we said, not a lot of Rocket League expertise on the LPL's behalf. So it was interesting to see who they'd engage to get to commentate and present the RLCS Championships, and there's going to be a lot of eyes, skeptical eyes on that broadcast. Now, we've just seen it, and don't get me wrong, I don't think they blew anyone away with their production value, because that I guess insinuates that there was some value there. But
wow,
yeah,
Oh well. All
look,
right.
it didn't set the world on fire, and
They really do.
It didn't, by any accounts, do themselves any favors, because the Rocket League community can be very, very, very fickle, very toxic, and we're only just starting to see that in that a lot of the results from league play stage, the first round, all eyes on this broadcast, and all of a sudden the Rocket League community has turned foul in this. So what they're starting to do is things like leaking results, coming into Twitch chat, basically then posting those results. Anyone that was trying to engage with the games themselves were getting results that were leaked. There was a bit of a delay between broadcast and the feed going out.
Which is always dangerous.
Always dangerous. Always very, very dangerous. Basically, just allows people to have that power to do something stupid. Now, the thing that I think I wanted to touch on most was the fact that there's a lot of maturity around this from the players. Now, I think, and this is a lesson that we've seen, learned by many people, maybe even in some instances learned it ourselves, but the feedback that a lot of TOs are going to be seeking is not in Twitch chat.
No,
You'd hope not.
It's not in Twitch chat.
I've got this vision in my head, right? So, they're on their bike at the little bike track, right? And they don't like the track. They're upset with the track. They're not happy.
But they're still
So what they
rolling
do
around.
is they stick a bloody stick in their front spoke, right? Flip off their bike. That's their answer to not liking the track, is to just
But then they blame
Self-sabotage.
just literally
You mean to cut off their nose to spite their face?
100%.
That's
So,
another
I mean, I've got a few questions around this, Jim.
Sure,
and I know
sure.
you said there's some of the earlier stuff we're not going to touch on. Now, you mentioned RLO. They've been around for a long time.
They've been
pushing-
around as long as the
yeah.
Rocket League community in Australia has
100%.
existed.
So they were approached to partner up on this.
Correct?
Did that actually go through? Were they involved in
Yeah.
all the steps of the way?
My understanding is they were consulted for certain aspects of how the tournament should run.
Were
And
they listened to?
My understanding is that they were not.
Okay.
Is that your understanding?
That is my understanding. That is my
Okay.
full understanding.
Okay, so that's obviously no good.
No.
LPL, I mean, I do feel a little bit bad for LPL, particularly even their talent, right? Like, we all saw the drama around the talent that was to be used for this, obviously being in New Zealand.
Yeah, or wasn't to be used.
wasn't to
because
be
they
used, yes.
announced that they were not being involved. Like, obviously, Yummy Cheeseman, he's pretty much part and parcel with the Rocket League community right now. It'd be a travesty to not have one of your central figureheads
It'd be sacrilegious for sure.
involved in the game. Exactly. It'd almost be. I'm very much trying to find an equivalent there. Like, you know, to be honest, we're probably blessed in the CS sphere in the sense that like no one talent is synonymous with the game.
Yeah.
You can have multiple different talents on any broadcast, and it's not like something's missing. But with Rocket League in OCE, big Ian just gestured to yourself. Huh? But it's a unique scenario in the sense that obviously not having them involved, huge wealth of knowledge. Was always going to be skeptical about the broadcast, particularly because of that element as well. And obviously not being involved in the broadcast also insinuates that they're not involved in any of the other decision-making processes as well. So, yeah, I think what I want to talk about is the importance of giving feedback through the right channels. Now, these guys are jumping up and down, kicking and screaming, kicking their sand across the playground about what could be done, what they wanted to see done, about the way the TO has gone about it. No, I'm not in any way saying that, you know, things were done correctly, because my understanding is that they weren't.
Twitch chat's not the place.
But Twitch chat is not the place, nor is
personal attacks.
Personal attacks taking to, you know, the classic make a Twitch account about someone and just start shit posting.
Who has the time for that anyway? Like,
the point we're trying to get at here is that if you want your feedback to be taken seriously, the channels are going to exist for you to do this properly.
even just Twitter.
Twitter, yes, but it
it's
needs
gotta
to be constructive.
Exactly. Bro.
Did we just say that in sync?
Do we just become best friends?
Wow.
Yeah.
We just constructed a best friendship.
I'm very careful when I give feedback because of the weight it has, that I make sure that it is constructive.
I want to have a chat to you, mister.
Yeah. The only time I ever haven't done that is just when I was just like, I didn't need to give constructive feedback because it was that bad. It was an absolute shit show.
When was that?
It was a fest.
It was, yes, it was. Yeah. And I didn't let it fester. So I just dealt with it as it came. And that was the
You
initial
didn't take
one.
to Twitter with your fat fingers?
So I took to Twitter in anger.
Okay.
And then afterwards I clarified, like, this is why. Because I knew someone would be like, meh.
You also
But even
saw a
then-
very big opportunity for
they'd be like,
engagements
what?
there.
No, I didn't care about engagement.
Oh,
What?
surely.
What would they be like? I didn't catch that.
I knew they'd be like, well, it wasn't constructive. Okay. So basically what happened was, you know, but then they came back with the, you know, you could have gone through the appropriate channels. My idea, my thing was, I don't know who is the tournament organizer. You didn't tell me. There was no public release for that. You know?
Yeah.
If you've got something like LPL, at least you can go to LPL, you know? A known tournament organizer who puts their brand on everything. It's literally called the LPL, blah, blah, blah. So you definitely could do that. But I think there's nothing wrong. It's social media. There's nothing wrong with a tweet out there that just says, hey, fix this up. Because you might even be helping them during a live broadcast. But during a delayed broadcast, there's not much you can do to fix the product then.
Yeah.
I agree with what you're saying in principle.
Yeah.
Right? Like you go through the right channels if you want to, you know, provide feedback and help this grow. But
Assuming you know the right channels as well.
assuming you know the right channels, 100%. But then when you hear stuff about like, you know, RLL being involved and then their advice not being taken and they're the authority on this stuff in our region, are you really surprised that what ends up happening is you end up with
There's already a bad sentiment.
a product that doesn't work out, and then these delinquents are probably associated with that or know about that, and then feel like, well, they're not going to get their point across, so they just revert to shit posting.
Well, what was the expectation heading into it? Was there an expectation, like, you know, I think Gfinity and everyone before that had RLCS would have set a precedent, right, of the quality of show that was to be expected.
Yeah,
and then I don't think LPL hit the same mark.
Look, to be honest, definitely didn't.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of the backlash started with not so much the broadcast, because they didn't launch with the broadcast. They launched with the qualifiers. They launched with the communication around that and the way that things were running on that particular instance. That had already left a really bad taste in some people's mouths.
Okay.
So it didn't start from a good place. It wasn't as though the qualifiers ran flawlessly and things were well, and they were just purely attacking the broadcast. There were already existing issues there that the players were wanting to vent their frustration at. So I think it's safe to say that the expectation from previous TOs, your Gfinities, your Throwdowns, who were the only two custodians of RLCS league play in OCE, that there was already a precedent that there would be a lot of care and consultation with the community in creating this broadcast. There was, because there was radio silence about what was happening. Like, there was no talent announcement. Obviously, when you're trying to find talent at short notice with obviously
I don't see
limited
enough
pool.
talent announcements, by the way. I have no idea who's
Was
doing
there was
what
there
these
even
days.
talent announcements for
AUNZ
AUNZ this
AUNZ?
weekend? No, there wasn't. There was a couple of videos that could have been interpreted as talent announcements, but they needed to be approved by DARE, and then they weren't released or approved in time, so they didn't.
Well,
go
that's the problem.
That's killing
when
it.
Well, that's the
Yeah.
thing. No, that's the problem when you integrate sponsors into it
Yeah,
as well. When you're trying to have sponsor integration into announcement videos, you need to go through a whole heap of different hoops or approval processes, and that takes time. It slows things down. It stops you being able to just quick fire out, here's a graphic or here's a video, here's something that can get this information out, because we need to act quickly. But we didn't see any. Even a graphic,
Nada.
I think
classic graphic.
the way I'm looking at this now, in like the bigger picture, sort of outside looking in, is obviously there's been some teething issues for LPL from like the qualifiers through to now, through the broadcast. This is their first run.
At Rocket League.
Of Rocket League. They've had to bring in new talent as well, which is, it's got to be rough because, no Yummy Cheeseman and things like that. You already know the communities up in Raw. Not happy about that.
Doesn't matter how much they know about Rocket League, because the perspective is that they do not know anything.
They're not.
There's no way that they
Yummy
could know
Cheeseman.
anything about this Rocket League
But what I am going to say is the way that some members of the community have handled this has almost taken the spotlight off the problems
Yep.
that were in the tournament
Yep.
and put it on the community.
It would have been good to be able to come on and just be like, put LPL on blast and say, hey, you guys didn't do this, you didn't do that.
Nah,
like,
but-
like we do for others.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it feels like hypocritical that now we're like, oh, people are talking shit. Like
100%. And that's the community, like we said before, it's cutting off their nose to spite their face, right? In the sense that all you've done now is muddy the waters in this whole situation, right?
Yeah.
And you've taken some attention away from the tournament itself, brought it back onto you guys as a community, and guys, it doesn't look good. I mean, you can't behave like this in this day and age with TOs and things like that who are trying to support your esport
Yep.
and expect it to all be okay. Because
And-
it won't.
On the off chance that anyone in that circle of players that are putting LPL on blast are listening to this, I watched that broadcast. As I said, it didn't set the world on fire. I watched bits and pieces of it. It didn't have any sponsors on it as far as I could see. So to me, knowing how this operates within OCE means that LPL are paying for this out of their own pocket. They're underwriting it.
Yeah.
They're taking a hit on this, so you can sit there and then have a competition to play it. So
which is what we've been saying needs to happen.
Yeah.
precisely,
Yeah.
precisely,
And still be
But-
able to spectate it as well.
Precisely, but they are already taking the hit for you. You need to help them help you in this instance. You're not making their job any easier
Super ungrateful.
because they're
that's a tough pill
already
to swallow.
Exactly, they're already stretched on whatever resources they can dedicate to this broadcast, or they're not making any money on it.
As far as we're aware.
Well, no sponsors unless they've got media rights. I didn't see this broadcast going out to anything other than Twitch.
Yep.
That's it's safe to say no one's paying for media rights and this sort of stuff. Hell, they didn't even, by the looks of things, have support from the World Championships Rocket League channel itself. Normally, what happens in this instance is the broadcasts are aligned so that they roll over. And you've got the North American, the European division, and you've got the OC division, and the viewership rolls over. So you get a big injection of viewership coming in. It didn't appear to be that case. I was watching, there was about 300 viewers, and it seems to me as though they weren't receiving that support from Psionic's main channels. Whether or not that's because of time zone issues as well. Obviously, LPL being situated in New Zealand, they've got different time zones to operate as well. Very tough time zone to operate OCE because you go across New Zealand, Eastern Standard Time, all the way through to WA Standard Time as well.
Yeah.
So it is very, very tough, and it's only going to get tougher as well because daylight savings is coming in very, very shortly.
1st of October?
Oh boy.
2nd of October? I don't know. I haven't looked it up. But
Honestly,
usually I'm
I
on
just
that.
only know when I get woken up an hour earlier because of my
Bloody
alarm.
sun's up.
Yeah.
So, on that though, Jim, and not daylight savings, I'm going to talk about that. But on your point you're trying to make there is what the community needs to understand. It's not just Rocket League; it's any esport title. I mean, in this situation, you're right. LPL are probably doing this at a loss.
Yeah.
Right? They're probably looking towards long-term growth and relationship and partnership with Psionics and the RLCS and things like that. When you're doing something like that from a TO perspective, and then your community turns around and just throws it in your face, boy, oh boy, that's tough.
That's dangerous
That's
too.
tough we've somewhat been there, right?
We have.
I know that they're sitting behind closed doors going, weighing up, maybe it's emotional at the moment. They're quite upset with how the community's reacted, but they'd be sitting there weighing up, is this worth it? And if LPL pull out, who's left for RLCS?
It's honestly the only TO that would have capacity to do so is either an ESL or an AEL.
Yeah.
And I know
we know
one
how
of
we
those
feel about AEL, so
I know one of those is probably not realistically in with the chance. They're already running Rocket League.
If they think
properties, whereas ESL isn't.
If they think LPL's bad, just wait and see. But ESL though, they don't really do Rocket League, right? They have in the past. They have in the past. To be honest, I was actually surprised RLCS didn't end up with ESL.
They probably didn't even bid for it.
Yeah, mate, potentially not. I mean, they've got a lot on their plate at the moment. So for
they're
LPL,
actually really hectic right now.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no way for the overflow of any esports properties to go realistically.
Yeah, exactly. So if LPL were to drop it, where's it going to go? Who's going to run it? So if I'm the community, I'm going, okay, we need to try and nurture this. The previous people who have run this for us, if you go back, Gfinity did a pretty good job at running it.
Same thing. Very few sponsors over the actual competition itself. Sponsorship doesn't pay for anything. No one's paying for media rights. Everyone's taking a hit on it. Everyone has this impression. And this was discussion on Twitter recently. Thorin brings a good message to the forefront. TOs aren't making millions of dollars on the major. That's certainly not going to make millions of dollars on a small qualifier.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're not making. You're trying to build something with these things, right? And when you're LPL and you're entering the Rocket League space, they're trying to build long term. They're trying to build something. They've got their cool little studio in New Zealand. They're bringing in new talent. Cool. Don't burn it down from the inside if you're the community, right? You need to try and prop these things up. Now, if they continually mess it up and continually not take feedback and continue partnering up with the most experienced people in the Rocket League community here and then ignoring their advice, that's a different story.
Yeah.
That's when you can go, look, this is no good for our community. We need you guys gone. We need someone else to handle this. But this is their first time, taking this on. And the way the community's reacted was appalling. So
100%.
I think it's safe to say we don't agree with any way at which the community dealt with the
personal attacks and
everything.
Vitriol,
giving away the score and everything like that.
Yeah,
with a delayed broadcast, unacceptable.
It doesn't
don't do that.
help your esport.
It's killing your own esport.
Yeah,
exactly,
you're literally biting the only hand right now that is feeding you.
Yep.
Yeah,
and
it's not like Counter-Strike where we've seen many tournaments come and go, and the only thing you're killing is the tournament coming back.
Yeah.
Right? This is like a fledgling esport that's trying to get off the ground in OCE. The rest of the world's fine. They're all loving it. But just trying to get off the ground here at OCE, and you're just coming in to a sport that you're so passionate about that you're actually ruining it.
Yeah, and here's the thing too. If you go through the right channels with your feedback, you are more likely to have success in gaining not only the support of, say, for example, the developers. Like, the developers aren't going to sit there and read Twitch chat. They're not going to go through that level. Don't get me wrong. They will go to some level of checking up on their TO and seeing what's happening.
They'll check tweets.
But correct. But if it's constructive and it's coming from the right place, that's far more likely to be received.
Yeah, but
these kids
don't even know what the constructive feedback is. You know what I mean? They're just
they're at the level.
Just shitposting
too immature.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, half of them don't care.
They don't know the solution. They don't know the solution. They're just sitting there going, "I'm not happy with this. I don't like this."
Well, the solution is to just spam emotes in Twitch chat.
Well, to be honest, the Twitch chat was put to emote only mode because people were posting scores.
Yeah. Well, that was a smart decision. The other option is literally just time everyone out, give them like 10-minute timeouts, 20-minute timeouts.
But you say, you should provide feedback to the right places. Now, if I don't know the right place, I'll just tweet the @ of the event,
Yep.
or because I don't know the organizer. But this is LPL, so we could tweet at LPL. Does LPL have a forum? Should we go to Reddit? Should we post on Reddit about LPL? Like,
they had a forum.
Yeah, exactly. There is no way of knowing. That's the other issue. There's no way of knowing who the right channel is or what the right channel is. But there has to be an avenue somewhere for us to say, like, this isn't acceptable. You have to own this, and then everyone can chip in and say their thing. But like during the broadcast. A delayed broadcast? Like, come on, man.
Yeah, it's not helping you. It's not helping your community.
First of all, don't know how you screw up a delayed
Well, here's a little hot take from Yummy. I just messaged him to let him know that we're mid-podcast when he said something about me. I don't know what it was. But he said Rocket League ex-players already dislike cybergamers, so when things went bad, they were quick to jump on it.
Correct, 100%. That's the thing. Like, the sentiment already was not positive. Mm-hmm. And for the newer players who were only just being introduced to LPL, weren't familiar with any history about Cybergamer.
Yep.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, fresh start, different owners, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's a fresh start.
What is
You're sinking to their level.
Yeah, but did you catch that? Can you translate for that for me, Sean?
Yeah, you're all fucking idiots.
Okay, yeah.
I don't like porridge for breakfast. I'm going to eat coal instead.
Now there, little Timmy. We'll get you a new train set. But
Cybergame was the best, by the way.
That, to me, says that there's already a bad sentiment, right? So for the new players that are in the scene, not familiar with Cybergamer, their first introduction to LPL was second-hand information on what Cybergame used to be like. Then their next experience is maybe the quals aren't going the way that they thought they would or what they were expecting to get. So already things have turned sour.
I'm just trying to think about how many tournaments I wouldn't have gone to because I didn't like the tournament organizer. It would have been a lot.
Oh, you wouldn't have
Really?
played. You just wouldn't have played.
I wouldn't have played.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have
In
been
1.6, there was like rarely a good tournament organizer.
What the hell?
Yeah, what?
I was a tournament organizer.
Rarely.
Do you think...
Okay, good.
But I would go that's like going. I'm not going to WCG. That's being ran by Serial or something like that.
Pro
You know
game.
what I mean? Yeah, pro game. I'm like, I
can't do it.
Yeah, like come on, man, get real. Who else? What else? Who else is doing Rocket League? You idiots.
Yeah. There's literally RLO community tournaments run on a weekly basis, and that's about it.
Yeah, like Yummy's Gauntlet and stuff. That's
Community
essentially
backed. It was all community backed though, and that was again one tournament ran once a week, and it had a few different feeder competitions into it. It had the glove, and it had the regular RLO threes tournaments which fed into the glove, and there was a structure there. But again, it's all community backed. If you want some serious action to be taken about where your community's at and have some serious backing to try and take Rocket League to a wider audience, you need the help of these TOs.
Do you think the expectations from the player base were sort of too high based on what you've just said?
No.
Based on the fact that you've got RLO that's put together great stuff with community back stuff, with Yummy and stuff like that. You had Gfinity run it, and it was, by all reports, quite successful, like that product. You can even go back to, I think it was Throwdown, Showdown, whatever they were, that were doing some stuff. And, that had its ups and downs, but it wasn't all bad. Do you think the community's expectations were too high on what should be classed as a good tournament? I mean, obviously, there hasn't been very many tournaments.
Bro, we ran one from this couch.
No,
Careful what you say.
No, I'm aware.
That was a
but
DreamHack qual.
I'm legitimately just asking the question.
Yeah.
Right? Do you think that has anything to do with it? Because, look, if you're the community and you've got RLO and you've got these people that have run really good tournaments from their couch, right, you'd expect that a company like LPL is going to do a bang-up
I'm not
job.
saying they don't have a leg to stand on.
I'm just going to say that, no, I don't think the expectation was too high, because the expectation has been that they run in conjunction with and respect to the community.
Yeah.
That's the expectation.
And by not following through with the recommendations from RLO, I think that's a critical mistake LPL have made. Hopefully something that they'll rectify, and they can rectify real quickly.
As I said, I just want to preface this. That's my understanding of it. I'm not going to go out and throw any accusations out and around without those people who were involved coming forward to actually say anything about it.
Yeah, I was going to say, how do we even know that's true? Like, you know
precisely. So at that, take it until anything else comes out. This is purely just speculation and hearsay.
Okay.
So I want that to be clear.
Okay.
But the point we're trying to get at is feedback through the right channels will make a world of difference, particularly when you feel as though you've been done an injustice, like these community members may feel as though they've been done an injustice right now.
Yep. I think as well, maybe LPL aren't transparent enough. Obviously, they could have been better with their communication leading into it. This has definitely affected the level of immaturity that has been shown from the community. And if the community knew an easier way to communicate to LPL what is wrong, what they want changed, what could be better, then it might have been, it might have ended up in a different way other than chat being turned on emote only mode.
Well, if you've got a G-rated game, I mean, you got to expect some immaturity.
You already
Yeah.
knew.
Yeah.
You already knew that the audience skews younger.
But I mean, some of the feedback that has been coming out on this is not even feedback.
Air quotes,
It's,
feedback.
it's just straight shit posting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? And it's
Insulting.
Yeah. So it's like, you find an official email address and you start putting in that some of the shit.
Well, that's
they've been
also where
saying.
I need to come in and say, okay, guys, you've got elder statesmen in Rocket League. You've got these guys like Yummy Cheese Man and the guys that have been around forever. I feel like the onus is on them as well to come out and be like this and push this message of that's not on, don't do that, you're killing it for us.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm coming into this with. Whilst I don't have the same stature as Yummy Cheeseman in the community,
exactly.
I'm still and have been a part of Rocket League for long enough to recognise that this level of behaviour is bullshit. It's not on. It's not becoming of a community that wants to be taken more seriously. If you want more support from Psionics or anything as a region, act like a region.
Even
and
if it's just a local council, mate.
Yeah.
You got to act a certain way.
Yeah.
precisely.
And it's up to those people to call it out as well. And I think if it's possible, ban people for that sort of stuff.
Welcome to life.
Yeah.
Welcome to jumping through hoops.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to scream into the void on Twitter and get your way with things because the council didn't approve the extension to your house.
Yeah.
Or things weren't quite going your way, so you're just going to try and kick up a fuss about it on a current affair.
Yeah, but these guys act out like keyboard warriors anonymously on Twitch or whatever. But at the end of the day, they're in the scene. They're players. They've got their own interests at heart, right?
Mm.
I think if we could find out who those people were who did those things and ruined the day for some people, then I think they should be banned and there should be repercussions. So I think that needs to be some action that they need to take out of that as well because, you can't stand for that.
No, 100%. I think that, people and you were touching on this point earlier, people in esports and the community that are running at the TO, a lot of these people that run it are sitting there in those rooms going, is this even worth it? A lot of these guys work extra on this product. As I said, there's not enough budget being allocated to it because they're not getting enough cash flow from sponsors. And they're purely running themselves on passion, and which means they're going to have some level of an emotional attachment to it. Mm-hmm. And straight out, you've already attacked them.
Yeah.
They're not going to take it, in their stride. They're not just going to go, oh, okay, well, that's just business. They're going to take it as a personal attack. They're going to take it, to heart a little bit more than in other instances, as we said, because this is not something that is getting the full level of resources because of these external factors.
Yep.
So I think it's safe to say that Rocket League community, pull your britches up, pull your socks up, start acting like a proper esport community that wants to be taken seriously. And until you start taking things seriously yourselves, you're not going to be taken seriously in this instance. But it's really hard to segue into another segment off the back of this.
You just hit the bell.
Hit him with the moving on.
Yeah.
There we go. And I'm just going to check in with our sponsor, Skrilla, as well. Skrilla. Who have been fantastic in supporting us. And we're fortunate enough to have some support from local Australian businesses who are supporting esports within this region, which, as we just touched on, it's not an easy thing to come by. There's not a lot of sponsorship out there when, there's a lot of people vying for sponsorship out of a very small pool. So we're very fortunate to have Skrill on board. We do hope that you support them as well. They do offer esports, fantasy, as well as esports betting too. So remember, if you are going to have a punt, do gamble responsibly and support those that are supporting us. Gents, I want to chat a little bit more about some other instances that have come up this week. And I mean, this is not a new thing. This is probably a good step forward for Oceanic teams, in the fact that obviously in this region we know we've produced a lot of good talent in terms of esports titles. Very rarely, though, do they get to spread their wings in OCE first, showcase their talent, and then go on to greener pastures, maybe overseas.
Yeah.
But in a lot of these instances, they're already moving on to other teams before. They're even given a chance to maybe even fetch a buyout or something like that. Wanted to talk a little bit more about this, and this is only going to become a more prevalent problem as we do start having more teams start to go and progress, and more players start to progress through tournaments. Wanted to talk about large international organisations not respecting this ecosystem, not respecting the fact that there's been a lot of investment in local players, not respecting the fact that there's not a lot of money in this scene. So it is very safe to say that a lot of the org owners aren't getting paid from this. Their money goes straight back into the team, straight back into supporting them. And when they have a buyout over a player's head, it's usually because there's been some level of investment.
It's just to recoup costs.
It's recouping costs, or maybe it's just a way of saying that we've invested this much in this player and we feel as though this is a fair amount to ask for them. These aren't hard figures. A lot of these are open to negotiation. I'm not going to get into the the bullshit that is how much you think a player should be worth, but when we have big international organisations coming to this region, throwing their weight around, it puts organisations in OCE in a very difficult spot.
100%.
Because it makes them potentially look like the bad guy if they go, no, we want you to honour this buyout.
We want you to pay for this thing you're buying off us. Heaven forbid.
This unfortunately happens more often than people would think.
Yep. Exposure bucks.
A lot of the time, don't get me wrong, there's obviously some situations where it all goes very smoothly, right? An org will put a buyout on a player. Generally, it's in line with, and they'll adjust it, by the way. These buyouts aren't like hard figures. They're negotiable.
It's a starting price.
It's a starting point.
Yeah.
Often they'll, the orgs end up selling a player to recoup most of the investment that the org has put into said player. So when you look into like potential boot camps and money that's been expended upon the player, in that sense, will often be the figure the orgs will try and recoup. Right? Not all. Some use the business model where they develop talent and they sell it off and try to make a profit off that.
Based on their potential net worth.
On their, exactly. And you see that more in like, I guess, the more structured esports titles like League of Legends and things like that. There is a business model around that, and that's great.
Would they call them farm teams?
This region is a bit of a farm region.
Oh, man. Every one of my teams has been a farm team.
However, there is the unfortunate reality that in this region, when it comes to selling off players or players being approached by international regions, these international orgs will turn around and go to the org that they're speaking to, we're not giving you a buyout. So they're offering big, 6-figure salary to this player, but we'll turn around to the org and say, no, we're not giving you the $2,000 buyout. And the reason we're not giving it to you, because if you don't release that player, you're going to look like an arsehole.
Yeah.
And then if you're the org here in Australia who's barely able to make ends meet, every dollar you get in from sponsorship gets reinvested back into these teams and players anyways.
If you get it within your payment terms.
Exactly.
If they're not cucking you for cash flow.
And then you're turning around and you're going, look, I only want 1/10 of the value of this player on the open market, right? Just so he can have his opportunity and you cover some of your costs. And then these international orgs are turning around and going, fuck you. Like, that is disgraceful. And I know a few orgs that are really flexible with their buyouts. Because if you're a player in Australia, the ultimate goal is to get over to EU or NA. Doesn't matter if you're Counter-Strike, doesn't matter what esports title you're playing, that is the dream. So when you sign up to an Australian org with that on your mind, often the Australian org will be quite flexible with how the buyout looks. You don't want to be stuck on a contract. You don't want to be stuck in an org on a $50K buyout and you can't move and there's no movement on it, because that scares players. It scares players for the potential opportunity that they could be missing out on. Fair enough. But when you're in an environment where these international orgs are now turning around and fucking the local orgs for being, I guess, open and supportive towards the players with how these buyouts are going, it's actually creating an environment where these orgs, the local orgs, are going to have to turn around and go, steadfast buyout, here's what it is. If it's not paid, you're not going anywhere.
I mean, I would do that, but I'm an asshole.
Yeah, but I mean, like, there's a lot of orgs here, but a lot of people don't want to do that. I know a lot of org owners that want to see their players get to that next level, take that next opportunity. Right, it's a good story for the org.
Yeah, that's why
you
they
start
do
to become a
everything in their
destination
power.
org to then, you know,
But that's why these orgs do everything in their power to get the players out there, to get the players to big tournaments, to give the players a shot.
100%.
The players then shoot their shot. By chance, some international roster wants to pick them up. It's nobody. Like, I would just be like, okay, now give me an international org just for reference. That won't incriminate anyone.
An international org.
I'll give you
an international org that's done exactly what we're talking about in the last month.
Do we want to name drop?
Yeah, absolutely. Lazarus.
Okay. So Lazarus...
Is that the team that recently had their CSGO team step away because they did not get anything that they were promised? Because I'm pretty sure that was the case.
I think so.
Yeah, I remember seeing
that was with Swag.
So basically, Lazarus have come, right? And they've gone, hey, Aussie org, let's just say Avant, even though I know it's definitely can't be Avant because no one would want any talent from Avant. So they go to Avant and they're like, we want X player. Let's say someone that no one will ever want. Someone like, I don't know, APOC. So then... God. I'm just joking. But basically, they go to... we want APOC, and Wes is like, okay, 20 grand buyout. He's been our player for X time. We've won this many things. We've gone to majors. He has a sticker, whatever. No.
Yeah.
And Lazarus just go, no. Good joke. But if you don't, like, we'll probably say we tried to acquire APOC, and they can't do that. It's NDA discussion for a start. You're talking about contracts.
Try and stop them.
If they go ahead and do it, though, who's the arsehole? Because I know everyone else out there will be like, oh, did he have a buyout? And they'll be like, yeah, but we're not paying a buyout to an Aussie org.
The org always ends up being the arsehole because the player doesn't quite understand what's going on.
The player should understand what's going on. They signed the contract.
Yeah, but he views it like, you got to remember, you're getting offered this 80K salary or whatever over there, overseas. And it's like, the only reason it's not happening is because your current org is sitting on your buyout.
Yeah, the current org that like gave you all those opportunities to get your name out there in the first place.
Develop you.
And then he goes out and, you know, like he goes public with it. Like, oh, I had an opportunity to go overseas, but I couldn't go because
I'd bench him straight away. Bang, you're benched.
Then other players in the region go, oh, I'm not joining that org. Because all of them, every single one of them playing at that level, all have their eye on this dream. Yeah, the overseas opportunity.
If you're the best org, if you're the best team in the country, and they say I want that player, you're joining that org, even if you heard they shit on you for breakfast. Like if Greyhound was the worst org in Oz, and Malta died of a disease, poor guy, nice guy too, probably will happen. It always happens to the nice guys. And then they're like, Snyper, we need you in an emergency. I'm not going to be like, I've heard your org is actual trash, so I'm not going to join your org. That's not how it works, man. I'm going to be like, hell yeah, I'm in the best team. We're going to get the most done.
But what if you're not the best team?
Nah. Well, bro, who's going to join a shit team? I don't join shit teams. I know Ricky likes to join shit teams for money, but that's just stupid. Join a team you want to join. Join an org and if they support you, support them back. Don't leave. Don't shit talk. Don't do anything, because if you do shit talk, you should get benched straight up. If any information from your Lazarus, blah, 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 Avant pick up, I'm benching APOC.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. You become leverage for that other organisation to...
Nothing is done until it's done.
Yeah,
nothing is signed. Nothing happens.
Mm-hmm. You become leverage. In by doing this, you become the leverage that this organisation needed over your current organisation.
It's Lazarus.
To make this deal push through, knowing that the sentiment coming from you is going to be bad because you were robbed of an opportunity.
Yeah, well, now it's Lazarus who's the bad guy, okay? And if they want to post up on Twitter, then let them, because I know everyone out there with a brain is going to be like, but that's just reasonable. They're an org. We're an org. You would have to pay us for a buyout. Like, what do you think this is, a charity? Like, I know when Renegades were stealing players from Immunity, they just got whatever they wanted because it was just like, oh, well, we're friends. Like, we don't need money because we have money coming in through scrupulous places, probably. I don't know. But, like, you know, then...
You had good intel on that?
Just good intel. No, but, like, you know, if you got money coming in, you don't need it. Sure, fine. But some orgs do need the money, and that's why they have the buyout there to protect their investment. They deserve it. They deserve it.
And I mean, when we're talking about this too, like some of the stories I've heard, first-hand stories from org owners, right, multiple different org owners. If I'm sitting there and hearing these ridiculous buyouts, I'd be like, well, what do you expect? Of course, that org's not going to pay that. You're valuing this player at 10 times what you've invested into them.
Which, I mean, really shouldn't be part of the discussion.
No, but
Lazarus should not be saying, hey, we're going to pay this guy 6 figures. Don't you fuck him over. Like, well, I don't give a shit. Like, what you're saying to me, that's just hearsay. Like, that's not a real thing. And they shouldn't be disclosing that. And what that number is that they give you as well, that also shouldn't matter.
No, but what I'm saying is the buyout number on the player, it's not like I'm hearing these ridiculous numbers. Often what I'm hearing, where this gets real murky, is these orgs are going, okay, cool. They've dropped this buyout to a fraction of the market value of this player on the open market, if you would actually value the player, a fraction of it. They're looking to recoup not even the full amount that they've invested.
Just
into this
something,
player.
anything.
Just something, right, to help offset it. So we're talking really small amounts in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then these international orgs are still turning around and being like, haha, fuck you, we're not paying you, and if you don't release him, then you've screwed him out of an opportunity. And then you've got the player pressuring. Not only that, these orgs then go to the player. These orgs then go to the player and go, your current org isn't negotiating with us or not, you know, like...
Yeah, I've been in that exact same
They put
position.
the player... They turn the player against the current org, right?
The player becomes leverage.
Yes.
But the player needs to have a brain in this situation. Like, when this happened to me, like, we were talking to Tempo Storm when we were in Immunity, and they were like, oh, we're not paying a buyout. I was like, but we're contracted for like another 3 months. We just signed new contracts so we could get our sticker money. He's like, yeah, well, we're not paying a buyout, so just try and get out of it any way you can. And I was like...
So put it back on you.
Yeah. And I was like, yeah, no, probably just won't then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's up to the player to have a brain, unfortunately. And if they don't, well, then I think the manager needs to have a talk to them.
Yeah.
Would it be safe to say that like any big organisation in Australia who's had a player go overseas has experienced this at one point? Has had this international organisation come to them?
Well, Vox got Yam for free, I'm pretty sure. But then Renegades bought Ustilo for full price and stuff like that. So it works. You get a rapport when you get farmed from the same org.
But it's safe to say that like there's probably a lot of other organisations out there that have had a player be scouted by another team, and then they engage in this rigmarole of having to play cat and mouse with a big organisation that just does not give a shit about this nominal amount of money.
Lawyers.
Yeah.
Just go straight to lawyers. Get someone else to do it.
International law is a hell of a drug.
There's lawyers out there for international esports. You know, they've got their esports lawyer show, whatever it is. So it's like
esports lawyers, huh?
Yeah, just go to
favorite.
them. You know?
It also comes back to like if I'm a player, right, and there's a big 6-figure opportunity for me with international org.
Can't relate.
And then I find out that they're not even gonna they're not gonna pay my very, very tiny.
Do you know what I do then?
Buyout.
Do you know what I do?
I'd be concerned.
You'd be concerned about the cash flow, right?
Do you know what well, sure, but do you know what I do then? I go, okay, I'll pay my buyout.
Yes,
that's the whole reason it exists.
That has happened before, where the international opportunities come. International org doesn't want to touch any kind of buyout. We're talking even $500. You know what I mean?
It's happened super recently.
Where players have then turned around and gone, I'll pay my own buyout. And some of them even pay it off over time. They're going to go, well, I'm getting this big salary. I'll just chip away at it.
Surely, if you're a nice guy, you're going to let that happen, right? Afterpay?
Yeah. The thing is often
esports afterpay.
Get afterpay into esports.
Yeah.
What about that?
Unfortunately, and I don't necessarily agree with it. It's often the orgs when it gets to that sort of situation go, look, we're not going to make you pay. We'll just release you. That's their own fault.
That's their problem. They need to ask me to negotiate.
But I think what it's going to come to, and I think what you're going to find, the more that this happens, and it is happening a lot across the board, you're going to find that the Australian orgs are going to turn around and go, enough is enough. This is the buyout. It's a hard figure.
What do you mean eventually? They should be doing it now. What?
Yeah.
Is this the line in the sand? We're just drawing the line in the sand.
How is there not already a line in the sand?
If there is for some orgs, for sure. Some orgs are catching up.
The only reason we weren't in Tempo Storm is because we wouldn't pay our 10 grand buyout.
Yeah.
We wouldn't pay it. Like some people could.
Yeah.
But like
is that each?
Each.
Yeah, so that becomes a ridiculous
That's
sum
a
of
big
money.
number, right?
Yeah.
But
that's way too much for
Oh
one
no,
person.
this team went to 2 majors,
yeah,
had stickers.
one major.
Wait,
At
that
that
was your
point,
whole team though,
had
right?
stickers.
It was 10 grand each. That's the thing. And we
Yeah.
did have the 10 grand because we had the sticker money.
Yeah.
Who has 10 grand sitting around usually to
Well-
go? Oh, I'll invest in myself to go overseas and
I've heard of instances of players, like, for example, buying out one of their other players' contracts
Yeah.
because they're the most recently contracted player in the team and the whole team wants to go. So they're like, well, Johnny over here is still contracted for another 3 months and he's got a, $5 grand buyout. So we need to buy him out
Yeah.
so we can all come.
Yep. So everyone chips in $1 grand and away you go.
Yeah.
Now, I wasn't going to chip in for nobody, but I could have paid it for sure. And someone else on the team could have paid it, probably. Ask mum and dad. But, or you set up a payment scheme. If you're going to get paid big bucks by this other org and live a good life, isn't it worth it?
Does it become, okay, so does a potential restitution point become what they've started doing, and they've been doing this, they've been doing this for years with, development players from certain regions in, football. So it's like, cool, yeah, sure, you can go, but we'll take a cut of what you're earning.
Yeah, basically.
No buyout.
Basically Hex.
Yeah, but we'll take
Yeah.
1 or 2% of what you earn for
To pay yourself
for your
off.
next couple deals,
yeah.
Yep.
and that's how we'll pay ourselves back.
Yep.
Is that a potential restitution point?
I don't know,
I've
just-
never seen that worked into an esports deal that I'm aware of, where they take, well, your future earning for your next X amount of deals is this much. I know, for example, really famous example of this is Carlos Tevez in English Premier League. His original manager, from when he signed out of some Argentinian development team into West Ham and then into Manchester United, Manchester City, was taking 10% of his earnings across the course of his career for never having to have paid any sort of transfer or anything like that from his original club.
Yeah.
So his original club was still raking it in from this one player that had gone on to do things.
Look, I think if you're Simple or Faker or someone like that, something like what you've described could work. When we're talking about the numbers we're talking about here locally, when creating, often you'll find the domestic orgs here, their buyouts are almost less for the international orgs because there's been the approach, right? Where let's say you've got one of the best players in the country and he's on your bench and another org in the region wants to buy him out. Well, all of a sudden that buyout's holding even stronger than if he were to go to an international org because they don't want him to be versing them.
You don't play.
Yeah.
You don't pay. You
trying
don't
to
allow him to play for your.
Is that why
your
we saw
competitors.
Ustillo do nothing all year until the end of the contract before
Potentially,
Order picked him up?
they wouldn't have wanted to let that go without a buyout being met. We
Yep.
saw the same thing happen to APOC a while
Still
ago.
would have cost so much.
Yeah, his buyout would have been.
That his buyout would have been massive, and I would never have let that buyout get I would never.
What,
You can
you
almost-
would have happily just paid him a contract.
It's not even a
continually,
buyout
paid
in
him
some
a
of these
salary.
instances. It's
Yeah.
the fact that they can't afford to pay his wages.
Yeah.
For that amount of time. It's not the buyout. It's the fact that his
you
wages
get a
are
different
inflated.
wage.
But
when
you
you're on the
get
bench.
there's
You see these deals all the time in sport.
Yep.
But you also have the flip side of that is, okay, you got this big buyout on your Stillo, but you're sitting there with him on your bench. You're paying him a bench salary. So you're just spending money on this guy. Over time, that starts to add up as well. At some point, you might turn around and go, look, let's go to a third of our buyout just to get him off the books. Just to not have to pay him anymore.
Cut your
right?
losses.
Yeah. So, but yeah, the unfortunate situation is in this region that, we do face this scenario where some of these orgs are getting worked over by the big international org. The way the big international orgs are working too, it's really, really shady. It's it's a shit approach by them. They're doing it very much on purpose. They're acting in bad faith on
Just
these
because
deals.
they're European doesn't mean that they're a professional outfit.
No, absolutely. Look at some of the nightmare stories coming out of NIP, right? Who would have thought, right?
Wow.
And that's that's just one example. When you start to go to those orgs just below that, those tier 2 international orgs, which are still huge, still create huge opportunities for local talent here. Some of the ways they behave are pretty. It's pretty shady stuff. And I think what you'll find is, and the reason I think we're talking about it is, let orgs out there know that, stand by your contracts. Don't get bullied, right? I think what Iain
This
says
is
is
for players too.
I think, players need to understand how it works.
Yeah.
Right? If they're getting involved in an org and they set a buyout, they need to understand that that needs to be honoured by whoever's buying you out. And I would be concerned if my buyout is 4 figures, right? So, and someone's coming and offering me a 6-figure salary, that all of a sudden they can't or don't want to pay the buyout for me. I'd be concerned about what's actually happening and what they're doing over their side. Because it's all well and good to be offered this great thing, but if you get over there and all of a sudden you're now being treated like shit by this org, it's going to end in tears. So you see it in League of Legends. A lot of the league orgs, when it comes to selling players, they're all pretty good when it comes to this kind of stuff. The buyouts are pretty standardized now. People know sort of what's happening. If you've got a player that's going international and you're speaking with that org, you go, this is the buyout. They go, sweet. And it's either yes or no. It's like, yes, we'll pay it, or we won't.
All of that is centrally controlled to some degree by Riot.
Yes.
Like the transfers are done
Correct.
on paper by
a
Riot.
little bit different.
Exactly.
It
It's
is
a little bit
different.
less Wild West.
But the orgs that are involved in League of Legends, even when dealing with other titles, tend to handle it better.
Is it because
Right.
they know that potentially they could be held accountable for their actions in other games by Riot?
I don't believe so. I don't
No?
believe they would
Okay.
be held accountable in other games by Riot. Don't think that would happen.
Well, it's
but
like-
it's almost like they're more used to it. They get it. They sell players and make buyouts. They buy players. That's how it works. They understand the game. They're not here to play with spiders, as Iain would put it.
Play with spiders.
So
Frolic.
yeah, frolicking with spiders.
Frolic in the fields.
Frolic with arachnids.
So there are orgs out there and international
Good band
orgs out there that do handle it right. And often, because you do hear horror stories, we see players that go overseas in different titles and they get absolutely screwed over by this international org. Imagine that. Imagine that's your dream, is to go overseas, get the salary, play in the big leagues. You get there and it turns into a nightmare, right? That would suck. It's having your dream, your opportunity sort of torn down. And we do see that. Often the ones that don't have that problem do end up coming, like, you can kind of see it coming based on how negotiations started on acquiring that player. If you've got an org misbehaving or doing, taking things in bad faith, there tend to be the same orgs that end up screwing over the players as well, versus the orgs that do the process properly, actually pay the buyout. They tend to honor their agreements a little bit more often than the other ones. So even if you're a player out there and this international org is coming after you, but you notice that they're flinching on your buyout, I'd be concerned. Make sure that you really look into what's going on, and otherwise you get yourself into a shit show.
Yeah, they're potentially coming into it with under budget, like they're under budgeting for how much they think they need to for this region.
Yeah,
and that's not going to bode well for you as a player in the long term,
Nope.
as you said. So it's a really interesting perspective for me, because obviously that was well before our time as players. I say our time as in just me. But you still had dealings with international organisations. No one was interested in anything we had to do at that point in time.
Yeah.
But it's an educational piece. I actually think maybe that speaks to the transparency required from. And I know there's been efforts from organisations and players in their contractual dealings to have a nominated period of time where they must, either the player comes to the org or the org comes to the player if they're fielding an offer.
Yeah.
From another team, and that's just acting in good faith and trying
That's
to increase the
usually
level of
written into
transparency.
contracts.
Correct. So maybe there needs to be more stipulations around that, in the sense that the player and the org work together to try and get the best outcome for both of them. Because I think at that point in time, when either the org or the player fields an offer, there's a little bit of selfishness.
Yeah.
From either one of the two parties, it's selfishness, because they're like, well, they want me. They don't want they don't care about the org. They want me. Mm-hmm. So it's their money grab. It's whatever it is. It's like they're very short term in their thinking, and I think that probably needs to be highlighted as the fact that it is now part of the problem.
Yeah,
it's not helping anybody in this region. It's helping the bigger orgs do exactly what we've just talked about, and come in and use the players as leverage, use their status to try and bully small organisations out of what small amount of money that they deserve.
Yeah, well, because and it's the problem is like I agree. I agree with Iain. Orgs should just be sitting on these players. Orgs should just turn around and go, cool, go fuck yourselves then. It's our player. Come back when you can afford the buyout. You know what I mean? That's end of story. However, unfortunately, there is one or two instances in the past, and don't ask me to pinpoint them because I don't remember exactly what they were, but I do remember the situations where players have been locked down, not released due to buyouts not being
I know
sorted out.
Carnage locked down Spesh, and he's like a Div 2 player in Australia because someone wouldn't. I think they had kind of ridiculous buyouts, like a couple of $1,000 for, like him and Tham on like this tier 2.
But I mean, if they've signed the
Australian
contract,
roster. Yeah, but
that says that's the
everyone
buyout.
else respected the contract and asked if they could like pay their own buyout or get the buyout lifted, and they did. But I think Spesh went behind the back of the contract and tried to play in another team. So then the org was like, no, and then held
sat on him. Yeah,
sat on him.
Yeah. I think it's at the point now where I lost my point, Mac. But I think it's at the point now there where these orgs, need to hold firm, and players need to understand if they sign a contract, that says there's buyout, so be it. Unfortunately, there's a few orgs out there that are coming up. They're not one of the big orgs, and they're fearful. They're fearful of the bad rep or the community turning their back on the org for not allowing the opportunity to go through.
Well, we need to change that culture then.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So we need to change that. I think we as a community overall need to change that. If you're an org owner or an org manager out there and you are listening to this, hold tight, hold firm. There are people in the community that will back in your position, that will have your back if it does go out onto Twitter, that will come forward and say things like, well, and the players should be aware of this too. Players, if you sign a contract that has a buyout, live up to it. Yeah?
Or if you don't think it's, fair in the initial instance, don't sign it.
Yeah, exactly. Don't
negotiate your contract.
Yes.
Read it.
And
that's the thing.
You can negotiate buyouts. I mean, a player who's been with an org for 2 months has had far less investment into that player than a player who's been in an org for 8 months, right? So the buyouts can be variable in that sense. You can negotiate that in. If you're nervous about being locked down, you can negotiate how that looks. But once you've come to an agreement and you've signed the piece of paper, you have to live by that.
Yeah.
If an international org or another org comes in and wants you and is putting a huge figure in front of you, but is balking at your buyout, that's tough.
Just tell your teammates to kick you.
Yeah, well, that's it. Get yourself benched.
But either way, think about it. Get some professional advice on your initial contracts. Go through the right channels there, and you're going to be in a much better place because everyone will be.
Now there's money in esports. You have no excuse.
You have no excuse not to go get a lawyer.
Go get yourself help.
Yep.
Correct. I think that's a good place to now pivot into Mac's mailbag. Mac, you've been sifting through the post. I know we've had a lot of signed and self-addressed letters here.
Yeah, well,
to ourselves. But
I have a feeling that...
is there anything coming your way?
Yeah, and I want it to be quick because the grand final's about to start. So...
30 seconds.
Right, so Fish already asked his last week and says, the question. So I said, was it in the last episode? And I'm not going to ask his question again. Doggerine says, do you think a large amount of the problem with things like content is that a lot of people in the OCE scene are just too afraid to admit to themselves that they are doing something wrong, aka is it an ego problem? I think that was established on Twitter last week. And personally, I don't think it's an ego problem. It was established that there's an audience issue in terms of
expectation versus reality.
Yeah. And also, you had Nicole sort of chime in there for a little bit where she was saying...
Nicole's point was really good.
Yeah, she's like, well, the audience is there. It doesn't have to be the domestic audience. You're just targeting at the wrong people and maybe, people aren't interested in that content or you're doing it wrong.
Well, she also highlighted the fact that it's a bit of a talent problem.
Yeah.
And I'm not putting it on the players. It's also onto the orgs and the structure behind them to take players that do have good personalities and put that on show, right? As opposed to trying to fit a square peg into a triangle hole, right? So I think, if you want to have a read on a really good perspective, definitely look into her comments on that.
I was going to say, it's not obvious either because some players, they might have really good bubbly personality chatting with you and whatnot. You put them in front of the camera and they freeze.
Yeah.
It happens.
Yeah.
So it is to some degree trial and error.
Yeah.
And you're not always going to get it right first time, but I think
least
trying
trial.
things. Yeah,
least
trying
trial.
things
Yeah.
is good.
Yeah, you got to start somewhere. So, no, it's not an ego problem. All right, that's the quick answer to that. And we'll give us another little bit of time.
Another round of twist. Let's
Another
go.
little round up top there. Flips the egg timer. Anyway, I want to know his, and I'm assuming he means me, teams to watch. I know he doesn't really cast any matches below Tier 1/Tier 2 these days, but as someone has invested his in CS for our region, I'm sure he's possibly seen some T2/T3 teams, even amateur teams, that actually show a bright future for our region.
Good for Mac.
Like,
100%.
there's a lot of Tier 2 teams that are like getting really good performances at the moment. And like some of the Tier 2 teams, I wouldn't even classify as Tier 2. They're Tier 1 players that have been out of the scene for a bit.
Domestic.
They're trying to come back in domestically, right?
Can you name a couple of these teams? Like, who are you
Genuine,
talking about?
Like,
Paradox.
Oh, I wouldn't call them.
They're not Tier 2.
Yeah.
What are they?
Tier 1 point.
They're 1.
Tier 1.5. They're on the cusp. They're on the bubble. He's meaning like people that are like bottom MDL, like that look good. And in CGI, but I don't look at CGI nowadays.
No one
I
at the
don't really
bottom of
look at-
MDL looks good.
How do you look good down there? Like, you're only looking good if you're doing something.
Yeah, well, it's
Right.
like, you know how Genuine lost to like PC419,
Okay,
and
so
in the
they're
EPL
good.
quals, this team with Clutchy and whoever the hell else is in that team is now in EPL, and I don't know what that team is. I don't know why or how they've made it. I don't like Clutchy. I'm going to put it on record because he cheated in Face It. He did that texture bug where he got rid of the texture so he could see through doors.
Yeah, no,
And now he's in EPL, and I don't like that.
No.
I don't like that one bit.
Joke's on him now because he's got to play on ECA
Well, he's
servers.
banned from
Yep.
FPL, just FYI.
Yeah. So, anyway, yeah. So I'm going to say like PC419, that team with Dizzy, that's coming up. Whatever they changed their name like 4 times.
Who's in that
Recursive.
roster?
Recursive.
Recursive. Yeah, I'll give you the roster. You guys have a quick chat
I was
about.
remembering what they were called beforehand. It was called Catman or something like.
Yeah, Catman. I think it was Catman.
Yeah, now Recursive. I think is what they call. Look,
Is
to
he
be honest,
back with Matt CD?
I haven't actually
Yeah.
casted any Counter Strike all year.
Mhm.
So it's been a golden year.
Really?
It's been a golden. No, I've done Rocket League. I've done Sim Racing,
He's tried.
and no, I have not. Oh, look, I put my hand down.
I've tried to G
Put
you
my hat in
up.
the ring for something that got canned.
Here you go. So the lineup for Recursive is Dizzy Life, Disco, Matt CD, Tensai, and Elsno.
Right, okay.
So
See?
a couple of big names that have been around for a while.
Now, show me for trying to get involved in Counter Strike casting. Gets canned. It's funny
Oh,
too
Blast.
because it was the Blast Pro Series qualifiers. It was 4s, and
That's right.
Speaking
here's the best.
It was the grand final.
It was the grand final
Yeah.
replay
Yeah.
All you've done Ian is IEM this year?
because
Is that
Vitality pulled out.
Yeah. Not through choice, though. That they just haven't asked.
4s of Vanguard is what my qualifier match was,
Yeah.
which ended up being the grand final. Thankfully,
Which is funny because we did. It's like as if they've peaked after the major. When
Yeah.
I was expecting Fours to do a lot better at the major, and Vanguard making the final was a bit crazy.
oh, look, Major's different pressure.
Yeah.
Blast Pro Series Moscow is a bit more friendly territory for.
It was just a crazy
4s.
bracket.
Russia in Russia, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it worked out for the spectators, I guess, in the end.
It's true. It's true. Good audience by all means.
Yeah.
What's next in your bag?
Yeah,
mate?
so bringing it back, you've got Bazaar there as well. I had them as like in my top 10 when we did that top 10 for Here's the Thing. I think they are looking really good. They're taking it to some really good teams.
I was going to say, do you want to
Bizarre.
segue into like a really quick segment, or is it not going to be a really quick segment when we're talking about the importance of power rankings?
That won't be a quick segment.
That won't be a quick segment. And I've got to get to Comic Con.
You're
And
giving it away, Mac. We weren't telling people when we recorded this.
oops.
No, it's fine. Continue.
And then like Fury, this team that's like right at the bottom of MDL with Dinky and Pears, Cookie, and Badonka.
Are you casting?
next question.
Wait, no, that
Or-
just changed it
Is
completely.
it
No,
casting?
I'm doing nothing today. That's why I'm here.
This isn't nothing.
Just wondering.
I'm doing nothing in terms of casting AUNZ champs.
Yeah. And give us one more. Give us
Yes,
one
then.
more hot off the press. Max mailbag.
No, that's it. That's all we
That's
got.
it?
That,
Okay.
that was all of it.
Cool. I think that will pretty much round out this episode. I think we might have a discussion on the importance of power rankings and
Next
rankings in
time.
general
Yeah.
next time.
Maybe deliberate on some rankings.
Maybe. Or maybe.
Big maybe.
Big
That's
maybe.
that's
Big maybe. It's caused a lot of controversy.
dangerous rabbit hole.
Yeah, look, people
I
get
don't wanna- I
people
don't
get
wanna-
upset when their opinions get contested. It's like,
Yeah. by pure math. I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to get people salivating. Let's just wait.
Anyway, it has been another cracker episode of the Esports Social Club, not another podcast, gents. It's been a pleasure. I do like the AM recording because I think we get the better out of Sean.
Yeah,
No.
Sean's like never again.
PM
I'm like,
only.
this is going to be good.
Nope.
No, he's vetoing it.
Yep.
Come on, mate. It's now a little bit later. We didn't even
Sun's
start
out.
until the PM. How about that?
Sun's out.
Yeah.
The mooted time was AM, but we didn't start until
I
the
think my
PM.
washing's
Yeah.
dry. So, yeah,
Sunday.
There we go.
We've been here that long. There you go.
It's not just the washing that has become very dry. It's the jokes.
Oh.
All right.
I had to clarify.
Yeah.
Either way, thank you very much for joining us on another episode of Not Another Podcast. Thanks to our special sponsors, Skrilla, who have been supporting us. They've been excellent in doing so. And as we said, it's a small ecosystem. They're doing their part to help. So make sure if you are looking to do some esports fantasy, they have all the games going and, of course, some esports betting as well if that tickles your fancy. Remember, gamble responsibly. We're the Esports Social Club, and we will catch you on the next episode.
A shout out to Mangy for stealing my vape. You